Doom, the father of all first-person shooters, and before Doom was Wolfenstein 3D. Ask anyone about Doom, and you might receive some different answers, but with the same general idea. From the retro era, the first Doom was published and developed by ID Software in 1993, and developed further with the Doom engine with Doom 2, and Quake with the, Quake engine, solidifying themselves to manifest what would be considered the staple of modern first-person shooters. To the same premise, Doom Eternal in 2020 for the modern era, developed by the same company ID Software, but published by Bethesda, which kept the series alive and kicking. It didn't stop there for old Doom games. Oh no, they had an immense following, tons and tons of mods for the original Doom, specifically Doom 2, the most famous mod, Brutal Doom, and to the recent, My House. With such a general popularity with the Doom series, it also respawned a different genre, using Doom as its template, Doom-like games. From the old retro style, like Blood and his Steam release, Blood Fresh Supply, which still captures the 1990s gameplay, quirks, and story.
End of the line.
New retro games like Ultrakill keep the old graphics with the emphasis on the high-pressure gameplay, and the intensity forces you to react quickly to the many things around you, to the point where Ultrakill became its own identity. Including into the list, other influences from other series like Postal Brain Damage, from an open-world game with equips from 2003, having the Postal Dude complete his everyday task and pissing on people, to the exploration of Postal Dude's dreams, and still being able to piss on people. And even some games had unique and creative gameplay to tie with the Doom playstyle, as Metal Hellsinger demonstrates. Timing your attacks with the music and performing well lets you rock out with the music. Headbanging will become second nature. You know what else was made in the late 1900s? Something even before Doom. Yes, even before the creation of Wolfenstein 3D. Warhammer. The first edition of Warhammer was in 1983, but this was for the fantasy version, and that is not our focus. Our main focus is in the sci-fi realm, and in September 1987, Warhammer 40k was also born. Of course, throughout the years, those two versions will soon cross paths with each other. It began with a mod for Doom, then continues with Necromunda Hired Gun, which was okay, and continues with our main topic. So let us open the Codex Astartes, load our bolters, and rip and tear into Warhammer 40k Boltgun. Mind yourself for spoilers, obviously, and if you get spoiled, not my fault. Forged by R-Rock Digital and blessed by Focus Entertainment, to be greeted by the main menu and that casual rock. Starting out pretty strong there. I chose the hard difficulty because I adore challenges, but I am not a masochist. We start with an explanation by the Adeptus Mechanicus nerd about the corruption of the nearby planet, including the fact that there was a previous expedition of the Mechanicus to search for the power source that has been discovered. With the Server Skull following along to help with the searches, a squad of Stern Guard veterans of the Ultramarines are to locate the power source and eradicate any threats along the way before the situation gets any worse, and within the launch pad, they descend to the planet. Already my interest has been piqued. A straightforward purpose for the game, and the reason for the invasion of the planet is clear. No details overextended. Perfect. Once the pod crashes and becomes a pile of smoke and rubble, you play as one of the surviving Stern Guard veterans. Wait, what? Everyone just died like that? Except you? Look, I get it. Warhammer 40k is supposed to be grim and dark, but unless we were a gift from the Emperor himself, at least some of them should have lived. Or perhaps the Blueberry Boys are keeping track of their infamous chapter history. Or maybe having allies fighting with you would have been distracting and killed the momentum for the game, and I think that is the most suitable answer. Right, back to the pod. The Server Skull messages us that the aim was just a bit off. Yeah, just a tiny bit off. I disintegrate the corpses of the fallen men, cause why not? What are they gonna do? Fight back? We push forward with the mission, armed with only a chainsword, and topping off our health. Our first encounter is a couple cultists with the equivalent firepower of a rock being thrown. As we move along, more cultists show up, but I decide not to waste my infinite powered chainsword, and instead I turn them into puddles of red goop just by dashing to them. Makes sense, this character is essentially a tank with legs. By now, the player is familiar with the chainsword at this point. It can kill, it can launch you, it can give, whatever. It was time for a new weapon, the Boltgun. The old reliable. Constant fire rate with a faster reload. Fairly accurate, and the only weapon that is given different ammunition types and has plenty of ammo to find, and with a hidden trait of chaining stuns on enemies and rendering low threat enemies into soup. It's the first weapon, and it's already a pretty good starter weapon, compared to most Doom-like games that give you a pistol that you will ditch once you get other weapons. Oop, my bad. Oh yeah, more cultists. I know, they're supposed to be beginner enemies and are more of a threat once more arrive, but I don't really pay attention to my health once I spot them. Even if you were near death, it wouldn't make a difference against your survivability. Luckily, our answer to a challenge: a Chaos Space Marine. A bolt gun in hand, a sword with another, with even some grenades to toss at you that have longer fuses than your grenades do. Hey, I'll take what I can get. For the viewers, it may seem like I'm just chastising the game at the first level for not being Dark Souls tier of difficulty, but I am not. In fact, I love the beginning. A way to ease the player into the environment and into the interactions, and showing mechanics without having to be so close to your face. Don't you worry, the second level opens up the gameplay and variety, and continues to do so onwards. Taught you how to walk, and now it was time to run. The second level opens up subtly, both in combat and in story-wise. Bodies and skulls are displayed. The entire area looks to be dismantled, and the place ambushes us with more enemy variety, with heavy stubborn cultists that can soak a bit more damage than their cultist counterpart. Instead of being one-shotted, it takes 2 Boltgun shots. It doesn't die instantly from a bolt charge. It was a shame I got 24 more goddamn rounds in this 8-round magazine. Alaka blam! Here we have the shotgun. A personal weapon for those you can direct the hate of the God Emperor of mankind, or render their bodies unrecognizable, or for a more general score into a group. And what better to test this new firearm than heretic cultists and these strange abominations? Their color palette, it looks familiar. Chaos, blue and purple. Never mind that. We have heretics to slay. Alright, through this door. Oh shit, a Terminator. Oh shit, a Terminator! Fucking hell. Through the onslaught of demons and cultists, tearing through the mighty and frail alike, the first purging has been commenced. It was all out from here on end. Enemies spawning in. 10 replaced every 1 heretic killed. Health and armor dwindled, but the will to fight never faltered. Then gradually, spending shells and magazines, the enemies were eviscerated. Oh, there was a plasma gun and a boost. Well, I won anyways. The first 2 levels made a solid impact. As mentioned before, it was great with the easement of the player before ever so slowly providing more obstacles to be overcome, and optional discoveries to provide more stuff to carry the player throughout the levels. Throughout the levels, enemy types and the amount of enemies become numerous, but it doesn't really dwindle your chance of survival. I never had that moment where the fun it had was killed, and it allows the player to still be able to react from circumstances. Bullets flying and the fireballs are hurled at you, and they are quite fast. But you could react to them. Being able to witness the projectiles heading towards you and still have a chance to evade without any of that hit scan or any of that bullshit that comes from ranged enemies is right there one of the best portion of the gunplay. Lord accurate ultimates. The ranged enemies majority of the time don't have hit scans, with some exceptions with the bosses, but we have mankind's greatest invention to counter it: a wall. I love games that can just be challenging without having to ramp up the bullshit meter. Balancing both fun and challenging is, in of itself, challenging, but Boltgun, especially in first chapter and later in the second chapter, achieves that balance. It makes the game shine. With different enemy types comes with different enemy quirks. Some are weak alone, but stronger in numbers. Some have acquired heavy weaponry to delete your entire skeletal structure. Some can fly, some can soak the damage, and some can go fuck themselves. Although, as I was playing, some of the enemies do feel quite similar to Doom enemies. The cultists with their weapon variety and common grunts like the zombie men, blowhorns with pinkies, and flamers with imps, and so on. Nothing wrong with these comparisons, this is just my observation. But as long as these similarities are unique and entertaining, I don't mind. In fact, I think it's true here, as they behave, fight, and act in the most chaos cultist ways possible. Just like in Doom, enemies can turn against each other if they so happen to hit their ally. Saves ammo, and it's pretty lore accurate since chaos turn against each other even when the common enemy is visible. Here's a good tip: since the enemies will trace your shot, it'll be a best idea to move unpredictably. Changing directions or just simply jumping just makes it less likely for them to hit you, providing quick thinking and strategy for either quick skirmishes or lengthy battles. With different weapon strength comes with different tiers of toughness. If your weapon strength is higher than the enemy's toughness, you will basically melt them. But if your weapon strength is lower than the enemy's toughness, you're just basically dealing paper cuts. The weapons you have collected have their own attributes, as for example the plasma gun will overheat after 6 or more consecutive shots, which will start damaging you. And if you decide to shoot it close to a wall, your results are instant and your regret is immediate. Or the heavy bolt gun that will slow you down significantly and does not have an ammo reserve. but all of them have the universal trait of turning your enemies to red mush. It is aesthetically pleasing to turn a giant threat into nothingness, but it's also a game mechanic, either preventing the pink horror from spawning more minions after death, or the aspiring champion from coming back from the dead, which will become stronger, adding a little more addition to an already solid system. But that's not enough. You need a little more punch to your weapon, and with power-ups, it becomes more powerful. One of the power-ups is a Mechanicus symbol, which basically powers up your weapon for the entire level, not only holding more ammo for you, but it also changes up the properties entirely, either rapid firing or just being stronger in general. Mega damage and infinite ammo can also be found. They are all located in secret locations that are present in every single level. Although some can argue that these secrets aren't very secretive. Some of them can be in the open and very difficult to miss, but some of them can be found in parkouring or hidden in walls. But after all of that, we encounter our first boss, the Lord of Change. With limited weaponry but a vast options to deal with him and his minions, we deliver a final killing blow to the Lord of Change, only to discover that we aren't the only ones looking for the power source. A traitorous Psyker, the sorcerer, wants it too, but we manage to make him retreat. We continue our main objective, to prevent this recurring nemesis from taking the power source before us. Once we hop on the ship, we make our way to the objective. This storage unit is only big enough for a bolter and 4 magazines, since that is what we bought for the second chapter. In the desert, the population for Nurglings and the Plague Toads has increased exponentially. By the Emperor, I hate those damn toads. Those tongue attacks are nearly impossible to avoid. But don't worry, I have some good news. The second chapter expands the environment. It's cleverly designed arenas with corridors. You don't realize it at first. Hell, I didn't even realize it at first. But if you really think about it, these are open areas for combat, exploration, or just simply admire the atmosphere, structure, and world building the developers crafted. If you just take a moment to glare at the environment, before and after the bloodshed mind you, it is beautifully built without having to say a single word about it. Even for low poly textures and graphics, it nails the Warhammer 40k aesthetics. Carrying on through valleys and open fields, another enemy type emerges, a Boltgun. Having incredibly high toughness, we only have a Boltgun at disposal. It was a hefty and difficult fight, but after an onslaught of 75 caliber rounds, it spirals, then explodes. Thankfully, it wouldn't be long until we retrieve our shotgun, and slowly we regain our armor. And I've noticed that we have 4 extra weapon slots. Perhaps we may acquire more unique firearms. But one growing issue of this game is that you will get lost constantly. This becomes more of an issue once you begin scouting for ammo, healths, pickups, and secrets. And if you explore like myself who investigate the entire location from top to bottom for those sweet rewards, getting lost becomes more prevalent, and the way to progress is not clear unless you remember which way is the right direction. Maybe that servo skull would be more useful other than putting on ammunition that I can see or ridiculing me every 5 seconds for not advancing. I'm sorry, if you weren't teleporting away every 5 seconds and displayed a map, we would be stuck here, you floating torch. Anyway, through the cultists, past the frogs, and into the caves, an elevator leads us to the plasma gun. Welcome home, buddy. The purge ensues once we enter the next area. We can finally shred those bloat drones with our new plasma weapon, while the enemies reinforce the area around us, but we end the purge with a chainsword to the Terminator. Nice! I wonder if the Emperor is assisting his blueberries today. The final wave of chaos ends. The first level starts and ends smoothly, with a constant rate of challenges we can overcome without too much hassle. Don't worry, I won't run down a whole script for each stage, since the second chapter contains a good grasp of level design, world building, and gunplay. Marching through the second chapter, there's a subtle increase of difficulty as you keep charging into passages and buildings, while still providing recovery items and ammunition. I think it's the enemy placement that the second chapter excels at, being able to ambush, overwhelm, and strike ferociously without having to be an unwinnable battle. Oh, wait a second, those Zench enemies still remain even though we decimated the Lord Change. This could mean either two things. Either A, we're just dealing with a bunch of random stragglers, or B, we didn't actually kill the Lord Change since it's a chaos deity. I would know the answers since, well, I played the entire game, but I want you to take the moment to take a guess. Lots of pitfalls today, huh? Through here, grab that, up again. Excuse me, trying to pass through. Ah, great. An aspiring champion. It always seems that the charging enemy is giving me the most struggle, or am I not alone in this? Since we encountered another charging enemy that is able to soak the damage and dish it out at the same time. Ambo, and that thing's charging power is no joke, turning a marine with full HP and full armor and destroying nearly all of it. Luckily, we can use walls to not become roadkill. Blissfully, Avenger's launcher is in our hands. A straight shot grenade launcher that launches sticky grenades, perfect for horde clearing and to deal with those ambos, toads, and cultists, and also makes a very satisfying boom, making me a happy customer. Deserts to caves to strongholds, recent and familiar enemies. Realizing that doing a bolt charge off ramps is not very effective, since it looks like a Looney Tunes character not realizing they're about to fall, suspended midair before plummeting to the ground. Each battle area and location will be progress, knee-deep in heretic blood and guts, scorching with unyielding firepower. Speaking of firepower, the melted gun is gifted to you, with the bonus of being on par with the plasma gun, granting us two powerful options, having both of them function completely different. One for long-range calamities, and the other one for short burst and short-range deliverance. Have you got yourself an answer? Well, the Lord of Change shows up for round 2, round 3, and so on as we're dealing with other threats. But with our growing arsenal and a good observation, we quite literally melt the boss. But I am exhausted for fighting this bird daemon. There's gotta be other bosses, right? Once we enter what seems to be a factory, with lavas, contraptions, key collections and more, to the end, our plea has been answered with, well, you guessed it, a Nurgle boss, the Great Unclean One. And oh boy, how disappointed I am with this boss. It seemed too close to the Lord of Change. With an attack you seek cover against, with projectiles to avoid, and just being a tall daemon itself. But the Great Unclean One adds Nurglings and air slash attacks. It was a bit tougher, but otherwise predictable. After the boss, we had to descend into the next areas, with cultists and chaos warriors trying to slow us down. I did try to stomp on one of the cultists like in the first chapter, but apparently this one was made of rubber and didn't get crushed. But anyway, onwards past down hallways, through the xenovaults as the game mentions, being crushed by a ceiling fan because I'm blind as all hell, and raiding through each compound in sections. And we finally fight that damn sorcerer we've been looking for, only for him to summon waves upon waves of enemies to pour upon us, dying each time before forcing that sorcerer to retreat again. The Mechanicus informs us that the sorcerer is using the power source to expand the rift, pouring in with more heretics, all the while holding off an assault by herself. This will be the final resolve against that sorcerer. Onto the ship to put a bolt round against the sorcerer's operation. Or him, whichever works. I can speak about the aesthetics of the game, but there's nothing to go on with the story or the lore, so here's what I got. Our character's name is Malum Kaido, because I was messing with the controls and found out there was a taunt option. There's a key reason why your character is still alive and present during the gameplay, since Malum is a Stern Guard veteran of the Ultramarines, as stated before. In many chapters, for those who are not aware or just starting to learn about Warhammer, the Ultramarines are practically blessed, guided, revived, and even buffed by the Emperor himself, usually becoming either survivors or heroes of the story. In a sense, you don't have plot armor, you just have a plot fortress. Many of these encounters would be considered very unlikely to impossible to survive. As for instance, the Lord of Change encounters would scrap you and render you to mush, but the Ultramarines will match it by any means. Some that can be answered with, that's completely bullshit. But that is why your character has not been essentially killed off early. You're essentially the Emperor's favorite child. What is also pleasant to admire is the environments of the game. It just has that collection of grim dark elegance. As previously mentioned before, just have a look around. It blends in with the gunplay, but after the chaos has been dealt with, of course. There's that great emphasis of the knowledge of the Warhammer 40k, and in love and care for it to bring life to the Warhammer experience. Mostly a strongholds, fortresses, and the factories with the occasional open areas, but none of the environments tired me out nor were confusing or lackluster. As to the factories, the third chapter opens up with a pleasant waterfall of magma. We arrive at the smelting decks. Magma pours from above, and our only option is up, cleaning up the heretical mess. Our tour guide is the yellow mustard stain markings. The first level focusing more on the first person platforming. I gotta say, it's very unique. I don't think that's what a run and gun game inspires to be, but what do I know? Up to the tippity top, the rooms were pouring with enemies, and holy shit, once the purge commenced, it was true hell. Barely surviving within waves, having to hunt down health packs and shields, and being cornered by the swarms. After that, it was back to platforming, and with an inclusion of those slim ass platforms. Made it. Thank the Emperor. Oh look, a switch. Oh look, an ambush. Bam bam boom, done. Key grabbed. Climbing up the ramps as our only option is up, fighting against a small collection of enemies. Encountering the most difficult opponent of all, a ledge above. With some dedication and peculiar timing, we enter ourselves another purge, with enclosed areas and trapped corridors. Some to choke up your escapes and movement, however we have the Volkite Cavalier to decimate them choke points. And that concludes the first level of the third chapter. I'm going to be honest, the third chapter is quite weak compared to the other two chapters, with players being familiarized and adapting to the enemies and the game's gimmicks. So, the game starts to turn up the enemy amounts and throw it directly at you. One example I can tell you is in the level Promethean Supply, they bait you with a shotgun once it starts, swarming you with Nurglings as 2 doors open, and they just start pouring out towards you. It doesn't seem much of a problem at first, but once you reach the end of the level, it starts becoming more of an issue. Getting the bearings of the room? No? Too bad. Lava starts rising from underneath, and to top it all off, enemies start teleporting in to slow you down. So you have 2 options here. You either have to endure some damage from the incoming fire and from those damn frogs, or stay on your ground and fight against the horde while lava starts rising up. Another thing about the 3rd chapter is the maps. It would seem as though that the levels are arena focused, no need for it to be subtle or lead to other sections. The one level I can think off the top of my head is the Grand Elevator. The main focus is within this large room, gradually opening up more sections to collect more weapons, but you need to do a quick expedition through small sections for keys, returning back to the main room to operate these key readers. And every time you do, a purge will commence, with supplies on ammo and health becoming more and more scarce. I would like to say, the map was okay in general. It had an interesting concept of having a center point to return to, yet I wish it had more impact. There was this feeling, a sense that there was something missing that would improve the Grand Elevator. I am just unsure what would though. Thankfully, there's a saving grace for the 3rd chapter. An ace in its sleeve. The BFG for Boltgun, the Grav Cannon. A pure damage dealing firepower, extremely accurate and extremely deadly. Tanky targets or a crowd of enemies, it would shred them all, but it also shreds your ammo reserves. For such a minor drawback, it's effectively a point and click red pacemaker, a great weapon for the entire chapter. With all of the collected armaments and conquering nearly all the levels, it was time for the final mission, our recurring nemesis, the Sorcerer. Arisen from the platform, we resupply our ammunition and restock our armory. Now we essentially just have an entire roster of destruction up our ass. We confront the traitorous Psyker himself, the Sorcerer, as our servo skull relays his messages, only feeling our need to shut him up for good. We cannot strike him directly just yet, as the Great Unclean One and his minions are protecting the Sorcerer. A shield denies us our urge to smite the heathen. We slay the Sorcerer once again, only for him to return shortly afterwards in Najean's reinforcements. This is coming to the point where resources are becoming stingy, searching every nook and cranny, every corner, and every container for those glorious mech kits. This shall not deter me, the finale for the Lord of Change, and after refreshment of ammunition, I rain holy hellfire. Another successful kill. Nope, he's back. That persistent little shit. Remnants of Nurgle and Tzeentch covered the entire arena, an increasing desperation to halt the Blueberry Marine. Gracefully, an infinite ammo power-up aided our endless hatred. Great, the Emperor's might annihilated our enemies. Now, where's the Sorcerer? Where is he? How do I lose track of a fucking Sorcerer? That little bitch. Once I find him, I'm gonna rain hell upon— Oh, there he is. It was just him and us. I exhausted all of my available options, but I made sure to end it on the Boltgun, for a more poetic end. Even his own teleportation failed him, rendering him unrecognizable. The Warpstone fragment contained. The Mechanicus device destroyed, and the rift closes. But we cannot end on such a note. Our mission is not over. Chaos still remains. What can I say about Warhammer 40k Boltgun? I say it's a pretty solid game. A mixture of lore-accurate sceneries, weaponry, and encounters, alongside with a fast-paced run-and-gun drive to keep the adrenaline pumping, assisted by the Doom aspect. There were a few glaring issues, but it should not overshadow how enjoyable the game is, with individual chapters providing intriguing gameplay. I personally encountered some bugs, but none of them were game-breaking, just brought more enjoyment. I do hope they add an extension to the game, since it was hinted that our work is not over, and perhaps we can encounter Slanesh or Khorne with their own minions and champions. If you're a fan of Warhammer, Doom, or both, I would recommend this game, and see if you like it. I sure did.